chair and gave Pleasant Yacht Club, myself, the opportunity to present our position and concerns. If you look at the second page, you'll see that Derek Jones, who is the president of the Black Yacht Club, or Pleasant Yacht Club, is on the right, and North Point Yacht Club is Andy West, was on the left of me as I presented on behalf of both of them. And our objective was, we said it clearly up front, we obviously are not opposed to this amazing project that's going to bring 8,000 jobs indirectly and directly to Baltimore County, Eastern Baltimore County. But we didn't like and was very concerned about the option that Tradepoint took as related to their dredging, that they said themselves, as an Aaron Tamacchio, that it would end up impacting the two yacht clubs and force them to be eliminated. So that was our objective in going down to Annapolis.
Is North Point also a Black Yacht Club?
No, North Point, and you're going to get in a second, is really adjacent to us, right next door.
Okay.
All right, so if you look at the presentation, page 1, it basically gives you the context of what I just laid out. During that presentation, the senators were surprised and shocked of what was going on. One is they were surprised that there was even a yacht club with the history that both North Point and Pleasant had, but also the unique history that Pleasant Yacht Club has. So after I gave my presentation, they gave the senators asked a few questions, and then Aaron Tamacchio, along with his counsel, came up and sat at the table and gave their presentation. To my surprise, but I shouldn't have been surprised, they didn't contradict anything I said, because I was focused on what their plans were, which was to eliminate us. And I went into the dredging a little bit, but there was no contradiction. Aaron spoke about what Tradepoint has done over the last couple of years here, being a good corporate citizen, and the jobs and so forth. After Aaron spoke, and you all keep me honest because you were there, Senator Jackson asked the question, Senator Carl Jackson asked the question, wow, I never knew this existed, and we don't want you to eliminate this history. And Aaron Tamacchio said, well, the history is the steel workers, and we're gonna put that in a museum. And Senator Carl Jackson said eloquently, well, I don't wanna see that history in a museum. I want to be able to go somewhere and feel it and touch it and experience it. Senator Mary Washington then said, as she was on her computer researching, bringing up the Maryland Department of Environment report, and there's a section associated with cultural impact of the development effort, and that section was empty. And Senator Washington said, why is this empty? There is cultural impact to what you're doing, and I'd like you to update that. Senator Jackson then asked the question, well, did you bring the two yacht clubs in before you made the decision? And Aaron Tamacchio said, well, we initially spoke to the Maryland Department of Environment. We also met with the Army Corps of Engineers. And then we met, I think in the January timeframe, with the two yacht club commodores. And Senator Jackson eloquently said, well, you met with them after you made your decision. And at the end of that meeting, we felt hopeful. There was a follow-up from Tradepoint to the senators saying that we're gonna try to work with the two clubs, that there's nothing definitive that we know that's in place, but we hear some things are in the works. So we were very hopeful after leaving that meeting, but we don't have a warm feeling because as far as I'm concerned, nothing's written in stone, and the plan and communication is that we would be eliminated. Although, in fairness to Tradepoint, they said that they heard us loud and clear, and they sent that same communication to the two commodores, and they were going to work with us. So with that backdrop, I'm going to go to page 2. This is quickly the history of North Point Yacht Club. And Rona, to answer your question, North Point Yacht Club, as you can see here, was established in the early 1950s. This was a yacht club, and I say yacht club loosely because these are blue-collar citizens that happen to have boats, and they're not $2 million vessels. The vessels are, can range from a couple $1,000s to, on the high end, maybe $250,000. So they're not, extravagant vessels. But here you can see the history of when it was established. Initially, the North Point Yacht Club was established for white management in the 50s and 60s. That entity was then moved as a result of changes that Beth Steele was making at the time to another area, and then they formed what's called the Sparrows Point Country Club. And as a result of that Sparrows Point Country Club, the non-white Beth Steele employees then reaped the benefits or had what was then the remaining yacht club. So that's what you see over to the left, and when we go out, you'll see it is the North Point Yacht Club that still remains there to this day, and that is pretty much the result of Beth Steele's support of the white employees at the time. Now,
just to be clear,
Sure.
the more affluent folks went over to the Sparrows Point Country Club, and then this was left for the more sort of
management versus non-management.
Okay, so this is more of the labor guys.
That's right.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right,
Exactly.
got it.
So, and I'd be remiss if I didn't bring my wingman in. Johnny Mathis, and I'm about to get into, is one of the 6 African-American employees that in the mid-50s then reached out to Bethlehem Steel, who worked at Beth Steel at the time, and said, we see what you have over there for the white employees, the Beth Steel employees. It's segregation. We're not allowed to go over there. And in fact, Johnny will tell you, they didn't even use the same bathrooms and locker rooms as the white employees at Beth Steel at the time. Will you build us something comparable to what you have there, i.e. a pier and whatever structures? And Bethlehem Steel eloquently said to Liesta Pleasant and the other 4 or 5 Beth Steel employees, what was their answer?
No.
They said, no, we're not going to build it for you. But what they did say, in fairness to Bethlehem Steel, is we will give you the wood that you need, the used wood, the pylons, that type of information, and you build it yourself. And these resilient 5 or 6 African-American Beth Steel employees at the time, in the late 60s, early 70s, took Beth Steel equipment, i.e. heavy-duty trucking and equipment, and lifted that equipment over here, lifted the wood over here, and built the first piece of what is known now as the Pleasant Yacht Club Pier. They then collectively saved their funds in the neighborhood of $3,600, and they hired a carpenter and an electrician to build that pier, hammer the pylons, and that was the first piece of what was known in the late 60s, early 70s as Pleasant Yacht Club. We'll see all that when we walk out here. In addition to that small pier that has been extended multiple times, and at the end it's an impressive floating pier, they also built a boat ramp. That boat ramp, we'll see when we walk out here, was built by Johnny and these 5 or 6 gentlemen, and it's amazing understanding how they did it. They dug it up. They dug out with Beth Steel equipment, had it dug out, and they then put footers in and paid someone to put the concrete in so that there was a boat ramp. And obviously the purpose of the boat ramp is even used to this day. We actually use it this year in and out, and it's used every year to take boats out of the water so they're not impacted by the very cold weather or the frozen ice that they're under. So that's still used to this day, and those men built that boat ramp. In addition to that, what we're sitting here today, the initial part I shared with you is actually the bungalow, literally the bungalow or home that was brought over here by these 5, 6, or 7 Beth Steel employees, because they found this house. Beth Steel was about to demo it because there was some type of explosion, and they brought it over, and that was the beginning of the clubhouse, and it's been built out ever since, as well as there's a patio in the back. That's what this second page talks about, and it's a lot more history, but it's important to understand that Pleasant Yacht Club today is not only for the members, it is used by the community. The Turner Station community has events over here. There's a Senior Citizens Day that they've had for probably the last 60 years, where senior citizens come and enjoy this space. I'm sorry?
Wounded Warriors.
Wounded Warriors. So there's a lot of events that Pleasant Yacht Club supports the community. I'm from Edgemere, and I say this, I'm a hometown kid. I went to Edgemere Elementary School, a couple miles down from here. I went to Sparrows Point High School, and I happen to be a boater now, a captain in Pleasant Yacht Club. But I started here when I was running around in this grass probably when I was 12 years old. So this story is personal to me. So now let's get into it. If you look at the third page of this presentation, this is important to get a perspective. What you're seeing is, if you look on the left-hand side where left of the water, there are 3 slips. You see those 3 slips? And I mean where boats are parked? Mm-hmm. All right. The topmost slip, where it's a single one all by itself, is our slip. We're going to walk down there. You're absolutely right. You're pointing to the right area. Okay. We're going to walk down that pier. That's what Johnny and those African-American men built and then extended over a period of time. The other 2 slips is North Point Yacht Club. Those other 2, where if you're on that left-hand side from the bottom, if you count up 1, 2, those are North Point Yacht Club. All right? And it's important to give you this detail. Now go above those 3 slips, 1, 2, 3. Above those 3 slips, that big piece of green with the brown in the middle is what is in back of you all. That is the regional park, the Baltimore County Regional Park that was just built, and they had a ribbon cutting in it. All right. So if you took a satellite picture today, you see all that fancy stuff over there. All right. It's important to get that, because what Tradepoint is proposing is to take all of the land that's around North Point Yacht Club, those 2 boat slips, all that land that you see there, they're going to dig that out, and that will become water. I will explain why in a minute. Above that, where that single pier is, that's Pleasant Yacht Club, what they're doing is they're going to take, you see all that land, they're only taking about 5% of that land, and they're going to dig out and make it water. Everything else you see there, the pier, the structure, and all that land, the plan is to give it to Baltimore County as part of the regional park, which we were surprised. Initially, again, Tradepoint's communication to Pleasant Yacht Club, and I believe North Point Yacht Club, was that we need this land and it's going to be dug out and become water as part of our dredging. But we've later found out that our property, in essence, was going to be given over to Baltimore County. And it's important to get a perspective. The next page I'm going to give you or turn over to is the rendering from Tradepoint in their presentation of how this will look after the development effort is complete. So if I turn the page, you see that orange square, and that is the regional park. Everything you see there is in the parking spaces, the orange square, and to the left of that, you see like an aqua. All of that is the regional park. And in fact, you drove down what's called Worth Road. You drove down that road. If you would have made a left into the first entrance, that would have been the regional park. You didn't.
I went to the dedication, so I...
Oh, you know that well. The next driveway is where you turned in, which is Pleasant Yacht Club. And as you see, that orange rectangular piece, that's what you're sitting in right now. That's our clubhouse, all right? The piece that looks like a funnel, that small little tiny thing that goes into a funnel, that is the boat ramp that we're gonna show you that Johnny built.
The thing right above it?
The thing right above it right there.
Oh, okay.
All right, that's the boat ramp. Okay. Right above that boat ramp, that small piece that's going out into the water is the pier, all right? Okay. So again, what you're looking, and this is Tradepoint's rendering of what this is supposed to look like after they turn the land over to Baltimore County. And my point in giving you that level of detail is everything that's here now will be in the rendering, is in this rendering, and is going to be given over to Baltimore County. The only thing that's in this rendering that's not transferred over that's going to be transferred over to Baltimore County that's not here today is the parking lot. Everything else. So my point is, their plan is based on this rendering to give the clubhouse, the boat ramp, and the pier over to Baltimore County. And we've gone to a number of community meetings where Tradepoint has presented, and part of what they say is the regional park will have a public boat ramp. Well, guess what that public boat ramp is coming from?
Your boat ramp.
It's our boat ramp.
So let me ask you a question though, is they have a fairly large parking lot over there. Why do they need this?
That's a question for Tradepoint.
There's tons of parking.
There's tons of parking. And I have no idea, I don't know, maybe they're assuming the people that utilize that boat ramp will then have to park with their trailers at some point. But we were surprised when we saw this rendering in a report that said, hey, this is what it's supposed to look like. This orange thing, it's our clubhouse. The funnel is the boat ramp. So this is everything that 5 or 6 African Americans built in the late 60s, 70s that will become part of Baltimore County's regional park.
And I'm sorry, if you want to ask anything, jump in, please. I don't want to monopolize all the questions, but why do they need to return water back? Is that part of the law, like the dredging law that
It's an option.
Good.
so you don't have to do it?
Good question. So as part of the dredging, and you'll appreciate this, let's go to the page that shows the Coal Pier Channel, this thing that looks like this.
Okay.
All right? What's taking place is, the whole purpose for dredging is to make the channel deeper enough so that the container ships can come in. What has to be dredged is 4.2 million cubic yards of dredge. The majority of that dredging material is going to be moved to Norfolk because that's where the majority of that type of material goes. What Tradepoint, they decided the quickest way to end the job, and I don't want to put words in their mouth, but I think one of the most expedient ways to complete the effort is to put some of that dredging material in what they call the Coal Pier Channel. And what they're going to do is where you see that water in the Coal Pier Channel, they're going to cap it off and turn that water into dirt, into land. All right, thank you, Johnny. And as a result, to your point, Rona, the federal regulation requires that if that's the option they're going to choose and they're going to take water away, they have to have an in-kind replacement of that water. So they're turning that into land, they're capping it off, and the regulation says, well, you got to replace that water somehow. And Tradepoint's solution for replacing some of that water is to take all of North Point's land and dig it out and make it aquatic water, and a small portion of Pleasant Yacht Club's land and do the same.
A holding cell, basically, for water.
Say it again?
Sort of a holding cell for water.
I guess so. You're the expert with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but the piece that's very important to get out of this is the Army Corps of Engineers and the Maryland Department of Environment have concluded, and I have my next page will show that in a second, that this water is contaminated. All right. It's poor. Because of, it's an old coal pier channel, what it contains is not good for aquatic life. Right? So in essence, what Tradepoint is doing is they're helping the environment, because if you look at that picture now, according to this is Tradepoint's photo, it's not capped. So in essence, anything that's in that channel technically can go out into the main water system.
So they're taking away this land from North Point and some from you. In its place, they're making an impoundment that'll have contaminated water and impaired sediment.
Well, it currently has contaminated water and impaired sediment, and they're making it land, all right?
Okay.
So in essence, they're taking that impaired water and sediment away. So it no longer will be in place. This will be, you gotta close your eyes and imagine this being a pile of dirt and sludge.
But then they have to create water somewhere else.
That's right, an in-kind replacement is what it's called. And if you go to the next page where we have another diagram, and I'm not focused on the diagram, and this is all either Army Corps of Engineers, Maryland Department of Environment, or Tradepoint's reports. It shows on the left-hand side, and that's what you were reading, is the technical detail of what that coal pier channel looks like today. And what I did, because I couldn't understand that technical jargon, is I ran it through ChatGPT, all right? And the language on the right is the pure English language of really what it says. The coal pier channel was previously dug out. It's an underwater environment, is in poor condition. The bottom inhabitant is unhealthy. Top layer of the settlement contains multiple pollutants at levels that can be harmful to aquatic life. That's the current condition of the water that they're taking out. And the last piece, and this is in my language, on the left is really what it says, but filling in the channel would cover up the pollutant settlement, preventing harmful chemicals from reaching the bottom dwelling creatures, crabs, and fish. So, in essence, they're doing a positive for the environment by taking that polluted water and replacing it with land, but the regulation on its face says if you take water away, you got to put water back. Because that's the option they're choosing. They could put that dredge material somewhere else, or they could even ask for a waiver, or and that's what we've asked the senators to potentially support them in some type of waiver. Now, whether they do that, who knows? But that, in essence, is what it's all about.
And can you answer the question of how did that happen in the first place?
How did what happen?
That
Pier channel?
the poisonous, the contaminated water. How did that happen in the first place?
Well, I'm not an expert, but they call it a coal pier channel. I'm assuming that it was coal that was really probably brought in and out, and as a result of that chemical exchange, it probably poisoned the water. Johnny, you
You're
have
speaking about over there?
Yeah. How do you think the coal pier channel became contaminated to begin with?
They used to dump different material over there from the furnace.
Okay.
Metals.
Do it.
Okay, and we don't know who that they was. That
No.
Okay.
No.
You're saying
Yeah.
That's why I'm still.
that's what I'm getting at. Is that if that's who did it in the
They
past?
pollute everywhere they go.
Well, that may be the case.
Okay.
The facts are, we know based on the report that it is contaminated.
Okay.
And what Tradepoint will be doing as part of their option chosen is to fill that in. And the Army Corps of Engineers and Maryland Department of Environment confirmed that it is contaminated. So why use a regulation to penalize the two yacht clubs, and particularly North Point completely by taking all their land, and Pleasant Yacht Club, you're not taking it, you're giving it to Baltimore County. So that doesn't seem rational to begin with. So that's the basis for
It
it.
would cost hundreds of millions of dollars to mobilize that material from here down to Norfolk.
Well, no.
cost.
It's important to understand that they are taking at least about 65% of that and sending it to Norfolk.
They are? Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. No. In fact, let me see if I have that in I don't think I included it in this chart. But the majority of that is being sent to Norfolk. It's two different places, Norfolk and somewhere else.
Okay.
The least harmful is being placed in that pier channel. And by the way, that channel that I showed you of 19 acres only holds 18% of everything they're taking out. They're taking out 4.2 million cubic yards. That channel, and again, these aren't my numbers, these are the Army Corps of Engineers, Maryland Department of Environment, and Tradepoint's reports. That channel only holds 750,000 cubic yards of space.
I see.
If they filled it completely up, that's 18% of the 4.2 million cubic yards of dredge.
Understood.
And that's what they chose to do. There's other options. There's something called a crab pot restoration. And I'm not expert at this stuff, but there's funds and credits that they could set up to compare or to replace what they're doing. But they decided to put that dredge there. The regulation says you got to put some water back, and that's the option that they chose. Now, again, this is what the report shows. After we presented, Tradepoint, in fairness to them, said that they heard us and they're going to work with us, but we don't have anything in concrete.
So they're making assurances in public that they're going to figure something out, they're gonna work with you, but they have not presented with you any plans in writing or had any in-depth meetings with you where they've talked about anything other than, don't worry, we're gonna work it out.
Well, first of all, they have not communicated, well, when you say in public, they communicated to the Maryland senators.
Yeah.
And they also communicated to when I say Maryland Senate, the Baltimore County Maryland Senate delegation. So to those 7 or 8 senators, And they also, because I presented this similar report to the Baltimore County delegation on Friday, and they communicated the same thing to us. And they communicated this in a communication, and they then forwarded that communication to both of our Commodores. That's been the extent of the communication.
So there's just been no specifics about how they're gonna protect your property.
Correct. And yeah, so that the short answer is yes.
So Lafon, do you feel discriminated against?
Well, I don't feel discriminated against in the sense that the same thing that they're saying is going to happen in North Point is going to happen to us. But what we have here in the legacy of Pleasant Yacht Club is something unique. And again, I don't want North Point to disappear, but if something happened in North Point, there are other yacht clubs similarly situated as North Point. If something happened to Pleasant Yacht Club, there's no place like it in Baltimore County, in the state of Maryland, and I would wager there may not be anything like it in the country. And reason why I say that is they are currently black yacht clubs. Their characteristics are they're virtual. And what I mean by that is they have members all over the place. Their boats are, when I say all over the place, in the Baltimore and surrounding areas, their boats are different marinas, and they consider themselves a club virtually. There's the yacht club in Annapolis. I don't think they're in one place. They do have a location where they have a clubhouse, and that clubhouse is not on the water. There's no model that we're aware of that is all the members are in one place. They have their own pier, their own clubhouse, their land, and boating ramp. By the way, again, that these African Americans built in the late 60s and support the community. This is more than just for the membership. Turner Station comes over here. Last year, I experienced a reunion of the Sparrows Point High School that was at Solars in the old days. It was probably 75 people that came, and they had a reunion, they ate crabs and had a great time. My family had crabs here probably 2 years ago as a family reunion. So this little piece of land, this little slice of heaven, supports the African American community in both Turner Station and in Edgemere, and I'm firsthand experience of that.
Okay, here's another question. You said this property was bought for $3,500, and you like
No. Let me be clear that, in fairness to Tradepoint, what Beth Steele did when the White Boat Club started in North Point Yacht Club, as well as Pleasant Yacht Club, what Bethlehem Steele did, and keep me honest, they leased the land to both of those organizations annually for $1 a year.
Okay, but the black men put together $3,500.
Absolutely.
That's what you said.
Absolutely.
And that was the equivalent of
Over $1 million at 10% interest if it was in the stock market.
And the year was
the exact year. When would you say you guys collected that money and started the carpeting and engineering? Was that the late 60s?
1959.
okay, 1959. This is 2025. You have a black governor. You have the largest black state delegation in the country. Are you expecting more from state government, Lafon?
I hope so. I am I'm hopeful. We presented to them. They appear to be very supportive, and I tell you, and I want to give kudos the Baltimore County Senate delegation, as well as Senator Carl Jackson and Senator Charles Sidnor. They've been our champions. Even before this got the attention that it did, they listened to our story, and they allowed us to have a platform. And then we met in front of the Baltimore County delegation. So to answer your question, I expect and hope that we will get a resolution without eliminating the history, because if this is eliminated, it will never be duplicated again.
And one follow-up, does this have any, is there any reminder of redlining when you think of the highway to nowhere that went straight through West Baltimore? Do you see this as once again the minority community being just run through roughshod?
Well, you know, I'm not an expert from a socioeconomic or social standpoint, but again, what I can tell you is this was created in the late 60s started in 1964, and I am proud to sit next to one of the men. This isn't third-party history we're talking about. This is direct oral history from a griot, in my opinion, that is sharing what he and his Bethlehem Steel co-workers did in 1964, and I can imagine it. I can't imagine. It seems like it would be, you know, too incredible. It's a hell of a story if we can get it to the movies. But what they did, it will never be done again. Land's too expensive, water lines too expensive to have, and that's why the other clubs that we know of are virtual.